Our session this afternoon on our time, my time, provides an opportunity for us to explore how diverse faith communities can provide spaces of hospitality, support, and learning, particularly in helping displaced persons around the world due to a variety of issues. Could be violence, could be economic stress, globalization. And I know for those of us that are here in the United States, even more recent, the threats of ICE. Um, so our session is going to provide kind of three case studies from faith communities in the United States. Cheryl and I will be sharing those, and then Ahmed will be sharing one from the Netherlands. These spaces that kind of transform physical gathering spaces could be cafes, community centers, places of worship into active learning environments. And we are going to invite you to share some of your own stories in a little bit later. And it's an opportunity for us to engage in conversation about ways that we can provide these learning environments and learn from each other, particularly those who are displaced persons. I'll give you a little bit of the format so you know kind of where this is going. It is a little bit of a longer session, but there will be a lot of interactive components for you to engage in with us. First, Ahmed is going to come and introduce our theme in more detail. And after he introduces that, Cheryl, Ahmed, and I will share about our own case studies around this topic. And then there'll be a time for some breakout questions. And we're going to invite you to share some of your stories and your experiences as well. So this is a very kind of experiential example of ways in which we all are engaged or can learn from each other about how we create these hospitable places. So I'll turn it now over to Ahmed.
Thank you, Mark. Let me just briefly introduce myself. I am Ahmed Deniz. I'm a researcher at the Netherlands-based IDEES Research and Education Institute. My focus is in sociology of religion, and my work is primarily focused on Dutch immigrant communities and how that relates to religion. I also contribute to some various educational and research programs at the RESPEC Graduate School in the US. And I will be introducing the three cases we are planning to share with you all. And then I will try to frame all three cases for you. Then we will go more in detail of these cases. So, as Mark mentioned, two cases are from the US and one is from the Netherlands. And I will be presenting the case from the Netherlands. And they are actually really different cases from many aspects, but they have some things in common too. They all involve religious communities that transform ordinary spaces into learning environments and solidarity and connection. The first case is a Uncommon Grounds Cafe in Pennsylvania, the US. It is a church-run cafe, part of an Anglican mission organization, built around the idea of third space, somewhere outside a traditional church. It's not just about coffee for the people meeting there. It's about dealing with the problems of life and also a learning environment for the religious community. The second case is free thinking dialogues. In Dutch, it is vrije denken dialogen. In Rotterdam, this is a structured dialogue initiative run by a foundation of IDEES working across a city, Rotterdam, which has more than 170 nationalities, a very diverse environment. It uses something called the Zelfie model. It was developed as a religious education syllabus and framework. And then it has an application in this case for the wider audience. It aims to help people talk through difficult societal topics, especially around migration and religion, in community centers, schools, and churches. The third case is a partnership between two congregations in California, the US. One is a predominantly white progressive congregation. The other is a Hispanic congregation made up mostly of undocumented immigrants from Guatemala. They share the same building, worship together in English and Spanish, and have built real solidarity. Especially given the pressures many of them immigrant members face. It is a case about two different communities choosing to show up for each other and learn from one another. So the cases are a cafe, a dialogue program, and a shared sanctuary, different contexts, different tools, but they are about turning an everyday space into a space of learning and education. So we will talk through each case in more depth. And then, as Mark mentioned, we also want to hear from you as well. So as you listen, think about your own community or the communities you are engaged with. Later on, I think this will enrich the conversation. And theoretically, it is we are coming from different places, and different pieces are there, so it is a bit difficult to make a overarching whole theoretical framework. But I think I will mention two theories that would help framing this issue. One is experiential learning. Maybe we can name John Dewey, even though he has some different ideas on religious education. Experiential learning, as it is popularized maybe later on as well, is a good starting point. The notion that real learning happens through lived experience and reflection, not just instruction of the dogma or different cultures, etc. So that's actually what's going on in this cafe and the dialogue circle and shared worship service. A lot is going on, but one aspect is this experiential learning. People aren't being taught about the other. They are encountering them directly and learning their experiences. That encounter is also important from another aspect. The second framework I want to mention is coming from Thomas Tweed. His work is also useful because it asks what religious spaces are actually doing for the people having those experiences. In his book Crossing and Dwelling, Tweed argues that religions do two things. Basically, they help people dwell, meaning that they create homes. They mark out a sacred place, the home, the church, the shrine, on different scales. And they give people a sense of belonging. So this is the first aspect of religion, especially considering the migration and the movement of people. And the other thing the religion does is helping people. They help people cross. By cross means he means religions help people navigate boundaries, movement, exile, and creating those new spaces in that unknown territories. And when we talk about like modern migration, we think about national boundaries, but these people also cross different boundaries, language, culture, and sometimes traditions, religion, etc. So it is not only just a literal sense of crossing one physical border, but in a wider understanding of those notions of seen and unseen borders. And he describes religions as forces that make homes and cross boundaries at the same time. So you can see that tension play out all three cases that we will be mentioning and diving deeper. The cafe in Pennsylvania is a dwelling place, a home for some people. And the dialogue circles in Rotterdam exist because people are crossing, migrating, adjusting to a new country. And in the two congregations sharing a church, it is also including displaced people being given a shared physical home by another congregation, while still negotiating the boundaries and belonging. So, as I mentioned just a bit earlier, you can also keep these frames in your head. These are not just vague theoretizations of the stories we will be sharing, but they might just frame each case and all three cases together to give some direction what we are talking about and what are the relevant things. But indeed, each case has its particularities. This will be my introduction to the cases, and I think from here Cheryl will be sharing her case first.
Thank you, Ahmed. Wonderful to see you all today and be a part of this gathering. I am the director of the Center for the Theology of Childhood at the Godly Play Foundation, and my work is primarily on research and development for the Godly Play Foundation. But in addition, I have been, for about the last 30 years, a parish priest at an Episcopal church just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So I've done a lot of thinking about these third spaces that we've been discussing, and then did some research to find a case to share with you. In terms of my own academic interests, I mostly work in the field of children's spirituality or child development or the theology of childhood, however you want to slice it. But I also serve as one of the managing editors of the Journal of Childhood and Religion, which is an open source peer-reviewed journal. And I invite you, if you have work in that area, to submit an article to us, a shameless plug for the journal. So let me talk with you just a little bit about Uncommon Grounds, this cafe that makes its home in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. It's a church-sponsored cafe. As we already mentioned, it's run by the Church Army USA, which is an Anglican mission organization, and it's focused on community transformation as a mission. The church's vision for the cafe is really simple, but also powerful, and it's to create one of these third spaces where people can experience hospitality, care, and connection outside of the walls of the traditional church, which can be a difficult place for people to cross over for various reasons. The otherness that they feel from traditional church is well documented. People talk about that in great detail, but particularly in the social context that we find ourselves now, where there are so many people who are deconstructing their faith and struggling to figure out how they want to be in relationship with church. So providing these third spaces where they can go and explore their faith and their spirituality and their relationships, and unpack them with people who are sympathetic and willing to listen, has proven to be a powerful thing. So of course, the goal is not simply to serve coffee and food, but to cultivate a place where people, regardless of their background or beliefs, can experience welcome, dignity, and a sense of belonging. For many of the participants, from what I've understand as I read about Uncommon Cafe, this process is deeply formative, right? We're all about Christian formation on our committee. And so I was looking at it through that lens. How is this experience formative? An example would be Michael, and I'm making up these names to protect their identity, but a young man who went to Uncommon Grounds, who struggled with isolation and unemployment before joining the program. He wrote this. He said, "Coming here gave me a place to feel useful and respected. I'm learning skills, but more than that, I'm building relationships and that remind me, I should say, that I belong somewhere." So his experience illustrates that participation is about more than vocational development, which is part of what is offered in terms of the kind of menu of things that the cafe offers, but about relationship. And so through regular involvement in the cafe rhythms, he develops habits of responsibility. He participates in helping to serve people at the cafe even. He's gaining confidence, learning to trust himself and other people. And so his identity is shifting from one marked by exclusion and isolation to one rooted in meaningful contribution and shared purpose. Another example would be Anita, a single mother, who describes the cafe as a place where participation reshapes her understanding of community. She said, "I could come for a cup of coffee, but I also found mentors and friends who genuinely care about how my kids are and what they're doing. It's a little community that has my back." So her story demonstrates that belonging is cultivated through this repeated participation in everyday relationships rather than through a formal program that she participates in. But of course, the formative impact extends equally to the volunteers. David, a college student, reflects, "I thought I was coming to give, but I've received far more. Lessons in patience, empathy, and seeing the world through others' eyes." His experience challenges traditional assumptions that service primarily benefits those receiving assistance. Instead, participation in the cafe reshapes the volunteer's own character. The mutual formation reflects an important theological insight, at least I think so, that communities are shaped not only by what they believe, but also by what they repeatedly practice. So the daily rhythms of preparing coffee, sharing meals, welcoming newcomers, listening to stories, and serving alongside one another function as formative practices that cultivate virtues such as hospitality, patience, generosity, faithfulness, and hope. These ordinary actions become liturgies of sorts, liturgies of everyday life that shape participants into people who increasingly embody the values of God's kingdom. I could say a whole lot more about the cafe. It's a fascinating place, but I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
I will be presenting the case from the Netherlands. And this case is not just one place, but it is a project where this network of people are transforming several ordinary places that people are already using into this learning environments. So the religious education aspect also comes from the organizational part. The organization who is structuring this program project has before developed a syllabus for religious education in the Netherlands. It has a formal education syllabus part, where it is also applicable to a non-formal education as well. And with this project, they also try to enlarge this vision of this method, which is an acronym in Dutch called SELVI. It is focused on identity development and improvement, there are several themes that they discuss there. And with this project, they developed it further, where it can be applied in the case of adults sharing a coffee in these spaces. Some of the titles that they are focusing on is identity, belonging, Islamophobia, and there are several others. Sorry, just responsibility, tolerance. They have also developed a board game, which is called Mirror Mind. It is kind of a snake and ladder game, which teaches certain virtues like friendship and tolerance, which is not applied in this case of free thinking project, but it has those grants in syllabus development for religious education for younger people. And the organization who is organizing these events are mainly migrants and religious community, but they are doing it with several other religious and non-religious organizations, including the municipality of Rotterdam. Because at the center of the idea is that it is a very diverse city. As I mentioned, more than 170 nationalities live together. It is one of the most diverse cities in the world. Many languages are spoken, many cultures and religions are living there. So there is a really question of living together. There are tensions. There are questions that are not asked in certain situations. And the project is trying to create these safe spaces where these questions don't go unanswered, but they are discussed in a structured manner in a safe environment. So the aim of the project is this. And one of the places is a church building. It is a very old church in Rotterdam. And it doesn't necessarily only for the people who are engaged in the church. There is also it is trying to create a space within the church for the people who are living in that area of the city. So the religious community part is within the creation of that space by the organizers or by the church, but it is not only for these people. It is really trying to create an environment of learning for all the residents around those spaces. And there are some cultural community centers and also schools which are off school times used for the same programs. And the religious community first try to pass on this Selfie method and the deep democracy method, which I will not talk much about, to give them a structure. How can they facilitate these safe environments for all people with diverse backgrounds? So there was the first education of those mediators or mentors who will be leading these sessions. And later on, these people are now organizing these events with the support of the organization. But the end goal is also equipping these people with the necessary religious education, but also organizational skills after this project ends. But the aim is also for these people to continue their work in different environments and places. Let me check my notes just so that I don't leave anything behind. Yes, this was my case. I didn't give probably many examples, so I hope it is understandable without without the examples. But my case ends here. And over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Ahmed. My case study is connected to the congregation by which I serve as pastor. Give you a little bit of a context. I pastor San Deguito United Methodist Church in Encinitas, California, in the U.S. Our church is located less than a mile from the Pacific Ocean in North County, San Diego, and we are probably about 45 minutes from the Mexico border. Encinitas is primarily a community, predominantly a white community, about 77%, 16% Hispanic, and about 5% Asian. It's really less diverse than the broader California average, with a high median household income and a highly educated population. For example, the average house in Encinitas is close to $2 million US and is the 7th most expensive place to live in the country. We are what I would say, a progressive congregation, theologically and affirming, whose values include inclusivity and hospitality. And we try to live that out in ways that we wanted to collaborate with our Hispanic siblings who are seeking refuge and support, particularly as those of you that live in the United States know that the threat of ICE agents is really very prevalent. As a matter of fact, where we live in this part of California, many families are now, Hispanic families now are staying inside. They're not coming out. Even there's a couple groups of people that are providing food and shelter for them because it's got really intense. And so in our setting, we host a congregation, a local Hispanic congregation, Iglesia Maranatha, which is actually a Pentecostal congregation. As I said earlier, most of them are undocumented immigrants from Guatemala. Many of them, of course, came to the U.S. primarily fleeing a variety of different issues. Some was related to safety, some was financial. And most of those in the congregation are young men who are here working to provide support for their families back home. And so Iglesia Maranatha worships in our congregation twice a week and has other activities in our church community. And we've developed a very close friendship and relationship with each other over the past 3 years. That relationship has included a close relationship with the pastor and their family, and times in which we worship together, we serve together, we fellowship together. We try to share and worship together periodically through the year, and services are both in English and Spanish. And I've been trying to help our congregation not to fall into the trap of some form of colonialization when it comes to our Hispanic siblings, and to recognize that we are all sharing this life together. And many of these vulnerable Hispanic siblings, have found themselves in very volatile situations. And I think one of the turning points, at least for our congregation, was a couple of years ago when ICE began to be more formative in our community I invited the pastor and his family to come on a Sunday morning to our English speaking service and to share a little bit about their stories with the understanding of the threat of ICE around us. And I didn't know how my congregation would respond. I was hoping they'd respond positively, but as a pastor, sometimes you never know, right? But they shared, and the congregation as a whole stood and clapped in solidarity with them. And it was for me one of the most powerful moments as a pastor of that congregation in the past 3 years, because it said that even though that we say these things about being inclusive and welcoming, it showed a great sense of solidarity with Pastor Carlos and his family, and really built a close connection of relationship. We have a group of people in our congregation who go every week and picket and stand at the San Diego courts where, and I've been there a few times, where many Hispanics are there at immigration courts, and ICE is waiting in the hallways to take them away. And so just to say all that to say that our congregation has really wanted to come alongside and to share life with these folks who find themselves in a very complex situation. And that solidarity didn't stop there. As congregations, again, we share worship together, meals together. We have provided resources. They provided resources for us. So it's not just one way, it's communal and collaborative. It's reciprocal and sharing in service projects like landscaping, shared events that we've done together. And we have all worked together to try to make it a safe learning environment where we can share life together in very helpful and meaningful ways. So we're hopeful that these three kind of case studies we've shared with you will be something that resonates from your own context. And in just a few moments, we're going to invite in for a time of conversation through some small groups. And during that time, we have an opportunity to hear from some of your stories as well. So Cheryl, I'll turn it to you now.
Thank you, Mark. So we have some questions to guide your time together. We hope you'll get into small groups and share some of your own experiences with these types of ministries. I'm going to paste some questions in the chat right now for you. So first, we invite you to share some examples from your own experience where institutions are providing spaces for hospitality or engagement with displaced persons that is contributing to the formation of those involved. So really looking at it through the lens of formation. How is that, whatever it is that's happening, impacting folks and helping to form them as people of faith? How does it benefit both the displaced people who are maybe benefiting from the hospitality or other sorts of programs that are being provided? And how is it benefiting the people who are volunteering? How are both groups being changed by this experience? What are the challenges that you see or experience with this work? And what sort of resources are needed? You know, we really want to get up on the balcony and look at this. If we as a community are going to advocate for this sort of thing to happen more often, what kind of resources are needed, and how can we as folks who are connected with theological institutions help to develop these resources with faith communities? What can we do to bridge the gap between the practices that are happening out there in the world on the ground and the research that's needed, bridging the gap between theory and practice? So we really want that conversation to happen, and we hope you'll get into small groups and share some of these ideas together, and then we'll come back to the big group and debrief.
Well, welcome back. And I know in our group we had a very stimulating conversation, and I hope you did as well. And we want to take just a few minutes to give you an opportunity for a few of you to share briefly maybe some examples that you shared in your group that you think would be helpful for the group as a whole to hear in regard to how we create these mutual learning environments, and ecology where we're learning from each other, and particularly for those who are in situations where they're displaced and are needing a place of home and a place where they can share life together. So, if you would like to share, you can raise your hand, either your physical hand or your emoji hand, and we'd like to hear maybe from a few of you.
Hello. In my group, we discussed and we are struggling with the concept of this uncommon cafe as a place, if you like, a third place. And we're trying to identify the first and the second place as maybe home and work. We might say that people who are displaced lost either their home or their homeland and their place of work. And here is a third place in this uncommon cafe, uncommon ground, where they can rediscover their community. They get help and all that. And I was wondering how that could be linked to identity. If people have to exist in this third place, doesn't that serve as a barrier to reestablish going back home, as it were? Because identity seems to me is always linked and to one's roots, to one's place of natural belonging, ethnicity, race, or religion. Or am I getting it wrong?
I don't think you have it wrong. You raise a really good point and question. And I guess Cheryl's not here. She had to go to another appointment. But I think, as I understand a third space, it makes it a neutral site where you're not on your own home turf, so to speak. You're there. It can be your new home, but it doesn't come with some of the baggage of one particular group coming to another place, a place where there's power or privilege. And I think the third space can be a more sense of equality and mutuality because it's neutral.
Would you say, Mark, that it's a place where identity is constructed and not kind of pre-given?
Yeah, I think it can be a place where a new identity is developed among the parties involved. And it may, in some ways, it could create a bit of anxiety and stress on both sides of the groups that are there because you're not in your most familiar place. And I think in some ways that can be very transformative.
And were the three places that you guys described, were they places where like somebody was offering identity to folks, or where really the identity was being constructed, like building the plane as you're flying it?
Ahmed, do you want to jump in? Anything there?
I think the three cases are a bit difficult to keep together for this question. So, because for some, the Uncommon Ground Cafe, for example, I think it offers people a place continuously, so people locally get involved there. So maybe it becomes part of their identity. But personally, I don't think that that space builds your identity. I don't think so. But through that space, you develop a kind of a belonging to that place, to the people, to there. who kind of helps each other. Yeah, I think it plays the belonging in that sense.
Yes, Elizabeth.
For me, every time I'm involved in experiential learning, so the encounter with the other always changes me. If I'm open to encountering the other and learning from them, I am amazed how it alters my understanding of who I am. And so on that identity question is when you go home, speaking as one who went to the United States to learn and then came home to Australia, when you come home, you are different. And so the identity will, but our identities as adults continue to grow and to be reshaped. And so I guess it's the question and the difficulty is for us who are trying to sponsor these encounters with the other in these spaces. It's a question of having done the encounter, enabling the people who are our responsibility, if we're the host sponsor group of the cafe or whatever the program is, giving our people the chance to sit down and reflect on it. And as was talked about in our small group, that can cause problems because the political ideas and the current formation of people can be that they don't want to allow this idea in. And so every time you encounter the other and the other who is different from you, it can be shattering to your identity and change you. Now, that transformative experience is wonderful. When there are others around you who help you with that experience. It can be scary, but maybe that's where we as religious educators need to be working with our people to provide for them some frameworks to enable them to do this opening up encounter. Does that make sense with others?
Yes, totally. And the example I have shared is really trying to do this. They had this syllabus for religious education, and they try to like reiterate it for a physical space where they try to connect with other people, trying to create a safe space, really, because it is. These people really encounter each other on the street already, but in order to realize learning, I think it is important that there's a safe space that people can relate to.
I thought Karen provided a good response here in the chat. Understanding third spaces is less structured and more open to negotiated identity and community, less history and or settled goals to limit that negotiation. So it's less neutral, it's more hospitable to difference. I found that to be really helpful. Any others want to share from your group a couple examples that came up in your conversation? Yes.
We were three in our discussion, and we have retoured a bit, and because of the different contexts, and we shared the experiences of minorities, not maybe displaced people, but within this context, maybe they are also sharing the same or similar difficulties, some minorities or minoritized people in different contexts. And we also shared some like examples of solidarity with those minority groups by the religious communities. I think this is also an interesting aspect of certain nations.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I imagine that what whoever is involved in these services of an uncommon cafe on a safe place is I guess it will help if such individuals who are providing leadership there are like helping people who already have identity. But right now they are vulnerable and resources are being provided to them to kind of rediscover their way back home, not necessarily a physical homeland, but find out what and how do they relate to a place they consider they are rooted in. I think it was Robert Frost who described home as a place you go and they take you in. So this uncommon ground, this common cafe is like a holding place for people to have the power to go back to where their origins are, where if you like, their natural habitat, where home is, where ethnicity is, where the family is, where the language. I know I'm not well educated in this, but I understand that the Jews, when they had to set up a new nation, they had to rediscover their language, for instance. Identity is something like that. I am not sure that if somebody who is not a Jew who speaks Hebrew will feel a sentimental attachment to the language as much as a Jew. This is just the various the images that are playing out in my head, and I say this because I come from a place that have been colonized. I bring colonial history to bear, and is that even when we still exist in our quote unquote homeland, but because we are dealing with systems that are in the place, the political system, the religious systems, there is a kind of out of homeless feeling there that we need to rediscover our roots in order to fully appreciate what we have, get rid of the imperfections of what our inheritance right now, it's a kind of heal in order to get rehabilitated by so doing, because we now discovered our roots. This question about how things are now, our ancestors addressed this issue, and this is the way they addressed it. And immediately you discover that, boom, you are like, now it makes sense to me. This no longer works. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense because I'm still trying to study this and look at it. I allow others to contribute.
Yeah, thank you. No, that was very helpful. Appreciate your insight. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, these spaces can be very vulnerable places, but they also will be a place, as you're identifying, a place of healing, hopefully, and a place of new community and home. And that I know we talked in our group. The issue of colonialization is one that we need to name it and recognize it and work through that. And there's going to be times where it's messy and it doesn't often work the way it should. But I think if we recognize that, then hopefully we can begin to see some change. So we got a couple hands up here. Thelma. Hi, Thelma.
I think it's already discussed. I mean, yeah, Father brought the concept of post-colonialism, and I think the third space comes from Homi Bhabha, who talks about the natives and colonizers, and then you find yourself in that hybrid place where
Yes.
you form a new identity, drawing from the two different, perhaps cultures or anything. And if it was the New Testament is a place of third space, I would say, where you're using the biblical texts, the Old Testament or Hebrew text, using it in Greek language, which is the Roman Empire's language, who has colonized the Mediterranean belt. And so you come up with a creative space or liminal space or third space, which is full of creativity. And I think we are drawing from all kinds of resources because now it's not just two cultures, right? We are in a golden pot. I don't know the English words
An
we could use.
amalgam, right?
Yes, yes. So you draw from all that can make you feel comfortable at home, and you create that third space and find yourself comforted and at home, even though there are roots pulling you in all directions. That small comfort, I think that's what is third space, but it is creative. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Thelma. That's very helpful. Cheryl, I think this will be our last comment, and then Ahmed is going to kind of close us out.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I'm going to tell another quick story. This is not what I shared in my breakout, but in terms of mutuality, and I believe it was Jamie Reeves, the public theologian, who wrote a
You're on mute there, Cheryl.
Thanks, sorry, about Jesus allowing himself to be cared for and to receive the hospitality of others, allowing a woman to wash his feet. And we are very hesitant to be helped in any way, most of us anyway. We like to be independent. But years ago, before I realized that it was unethical to purchase goods from a client that I was seeing in therapy, I was tempted to purchase a product from her, a mask, and I was going to pay her for it. And then in my supervision, I told my supervisor that I wanted to do this. And I learned that I couldn't do this because it was unethical to have a business relationship with a client. I proceeded to let the client know this before we had our last session. And she cried. She broke down in tears. My offering to purchase that, I believe, affirmed her giftedness and her value, because she lived in a very disadvantaged section of Toronto. And it broke my heart. But after that, when I was leaving Toronto and she was no longer going to be a client, she gave me a mask, the same mask that I wanted to purchase. I have it on my wall today, many, many, many years later. That was the kind of mutuality that I believe we're talking about, where one offers and another gives, and status and societal norms no longer give one a higher place over another. It was so humbling and truly memorable for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, that's really powerful.
That was powerful. I find that powerful. Yeah.
Ahmed, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we have reached our time as well, so I will keep it really brief. I think, yeah, we have discussed these questions with you as well. I think it is really important that we keep these stories being shared as well. I think that really makes this meaningful, and creating these safe spaces to for these stories to be shared. I would like you to reflect on the religious community that you have around as well. It can be migrating communities, it can be minority communities, it can be native communities, majority communities. There are so many of these communities I believe we are engaged with. And to some degree, I think they are trying to create these spaces. And I think it is important for us to ask how can we contribute there as well to the creation of those spaces. And from the theoretical reflection as well, all these stories we have shared about colonization, about native people, minorities, and also migrants, there is really an aspect of crossing those borders, and an aspect of dwelling, making home in that new environment, and maybe new physical space, or maybe that new people who comes there, or as a person you go to some other places. I think it is also a good framing of dwelling and crossing in terms of religion. And that will be my final reflection. Thank you all very much. It was really nice to hear the stories. It was really informative and inspiring.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you all for joining us. And our next session is, we've got about, I guess, about 40-minute break before the next session. Is that right, John? I think that's right. The next session, is at
Yes, the answer is yes.
6 p.m. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
40 minutes, right.
Yes. So a chance to give you a break and maybe get some food and stretch your legs a little bit. But thank you so much for joining us for this session. We really appreciate it. And thanks for the engagement and the dialogue. And look forward to continual conversation in our next session.